Li was clad in bulletproof gear by prison guards, with half of the station's manpower summoned to escort him due to his multitude of enemies. A prisoner attempted to ambush him with a dagger, but Li simply kicked the iron fence flat. However, as soon as they stepped outside, the lights suddenly went out and Li was promptly shot in the head. The guards immediately opened fire into the air ducts. Suddenly, a figure shot out from the ducts, bearing an uncanny resemblance to the deceased Li. Before the guards could react, he swiftly dealt with them. Others immediately opened fire, but the bullet seemed to slow down in his eyes as he used the corpse on the ground as a shield. As Li looked at the dead prisoner on the ground, he stretched his arms, feeling his strength surge once more. Not only that, his senses and speed underwent a qualitative leap. The surrounding guards were all dealt with before they could even fire. Then, with the speed of 100 meters in 3 seconds, he quickly left the police station, followed only by Multiverse Authority agents Evan and Harry. At that moment, Li attempted to escape using a wormhole, but Evan quickly altered his coordinates with a device. Evan aimed his gun at Li, ordering him to surrender. Meanwhile, Harry drove straight into Li, sending him flying. As they got out of the car, the wormhole opened, and a massive suction force appeared in the sky, disintegrating their bodies and pulling them into the wormhole. After experiencing 5 seconds of reassembly, they arrived in the next universe, which was home to the Multiverse Police Bureau responsible for universal security. Shortly after, Li was taken away by 2 agents. Li is a serial killer who travels across the multiverse, but every person he kills is a version of himself from one of the 125 parallel universes. When another version of himself dies, his power is evenly distributed among the remaining living versions. Li's ambition is to kill all 124 versions of himself, becoming the strongest being in the entire universe. He has already killed 123 versions, and with just one more kill, he will become the one. The multiverse court plans to exile him to a barren land to stop him. Unbeknownst to them, Li has an accomplice. Just as the wormhole opens, a woman opens her high heels, releasing a small white mouse. The mouse runs under the protective glass as instructed by the woman. With a glance from the woman and the activation of a signal light, the bomb carried by the mouse blows up the protective glass. Li seizes the opportunity to break free, taking down the guards. He reaches the control panel and modifies the coordinates of the wormhole. Once done, he quickly sits atop the teleportation device. He intends to eliminate the last version of himself in the multiverse. As a beam of light appears, Li disappears from the scene. Evan and Harry arrive, realizing where Li is heading. In the Karis universe, Li is known as Gabe, an LASD deputy sheriff. At this moment, Gabe is escorting a prisoner with his team. As they step outside, he senses something is wrong. Suddenly, the lights in the parking lot go out. Gabe thinks it's the prisoner's accomplices coming to free them, and they start shooting wildly into the air ducts. However, when he sees the face of the person on the other side, he freezes. The person across from him is Li. More police officers rush from inside the prison as Li fails to accomplish his mission and decides to retreat. Gabe follows closely behind, unaware that this is a trap set by Li. Li leaps over the wall and Gabe, fueled by determination, climbs up after him. This astonishes the team behind them. By the time he reaches the top of the wall, Li, who had been waiting, is already there. Though they possess equal power, Li's mastery of his ability surpasses Gabe's. Just as Li is about to shoot Gabe, Evan and Harry arrive in the nick of time, causing Li to retreat temporarily. Gabe's wife insists on taking him to the hospital after learning he's injured. However, Gabe can't shake the feeling that Li is nearby. His wife thinks he's being overly sensitive, especially with all the police downstairs. Still, Gabe insists she brings his gun, and as he needs an MRI, he takes off his ring and hands it to his wife. They embrace as if it's their last moments together. Then Gabe is pushed into the machine, and just as the doctor begins the examination, Li suddenly appears. The doctor mistakes him for Gabe. Evan and Harry rush in, and Li immediately opens fire. Evan and Harry return fire swiftly, but Li effortlessly dodges the bullets. After shooting at Gabe, Li makes his escape. Gabe narrowly escapes harm, and they instruct him to stay put while they pursue Li. But Gabe refuses to sit idly by and quickly changes into civilian clothes to follow. However, due to their identical appearances, the police downstairs mistake Gabe for Li. Despite Gabe's earnest explanations, his teammates refuse to believe it's really him. He's left with no choice but to engage with them. To prevent any harm, Gabe handcuffs them to their chairs. Only his wife recognizes him, and they agree to meet at home. Afterwards, Gabe leaves the hospital. Evan and Harry realize the complexity of the situation. To prevent further casualties, Harry agrees to Evan's suggestion to eliminate Li. After leaving the hospital, Gabe prepares to reunite with his wife at home, with Evan following closely behind. Meanwhile, Harry tracks down Li, who is attempting to escape. A fierce fight ensues on the street. However, Harry is no match for Li. Harry's goal in continuing the confrontation with Li is to take him down even if it means sacrificing himself. Li notices the energy bomb in Harry's hand and, just before Harry can activate it, Li instantly appears beside him, snatching the bomb and effortlessly breaking his neck. Meanwhile, Evan finds Gabe and informs him about the events involving the multiverse. However, Gabe insists on resolving the situation himself. Evan senses that Harry has died and angrily pursues Gabe, who is about to leave. Despite Evan's efforts, Gabe remains ungrateful, leaving Evan to helplessly watch his blinking watch. Gabe's wife returns home, accompanied by several police officers. To avoid the police discovering her husband's presence, she excuses herself to change clothes and leads them away. She then discovers Gabe in the attic, unknowingly facing Li. Meanwhile, Gabe arrives in the yard, and his wife catches a glimpse of him through the window. She asks Li where they first met, and just as Li's identity is exposed, he snatches her gun. The police burst in upon hearing the commotion, but Li swiftly dispatches them and takes her hostage at the window. Gabe arrives just a moment too late. Li kills Gabe's wife in front of him, then escapes through the broken window, leaving Gabe to be blamed once again. Despite his overwhelming grief, Gabe can only leave the scene for now. Evan arrives in time, but Gabe can only vent his anger by pounding on the car. In order to avenge his wife, Gabe agrees to join forces with Evan, even if it costs him his life. Just now, Evan and Gabe tracked Li to a factory, but Li had already set a trap. After surviving the explosion, Evan emerges from the ducts. As he searches for Li, he is caught off guard when Li suddenly appears from behind. Facing Li, who has become vastly more powerful, Evan is completely outmatched. Evan, taking advantage of the steam's interference, reaches the second floor, attempting to pick up the gun on the ground. However, Li swiftly flies up in a single leap, kicking Evan down. At this critical moment, Gabe approaches from the other side. Now, both of them possess equal strength, and Li, having waited for this moment, removes his jacket. Gabe also assumes a stance, prepared for anything. First comes the fist technique. Gabe attacks Li with full force. Although their strengths are evenly matched, Li effortlessly counters each of Gabe's attacks. Li's extensive combat experience quickly puts Gabe at a disadvantage. They fight from upstairs to downstairs, and eventually, Gabe is sent flying by a powerful punch from Li. Just when Li thinks he has won, the Gabe behind him miraculously stands up. But this time, instead of punching, he transforms his fists into palms, unleashing the secret techniques of Tai Chi. As the two below engage in an intense battle, Evan, from above, activates the device to open a wormhole. With the appearance of a beam of light, their bodies are instantly disintegrated and sucked into the wormhole. Soon, they arrive at the Multiverse Police Bureau. After their bodies are reassembled, Gabe and Li find themselves unable to speak. With their identical appearance, the chief finds it difficult to make a decision. When Gabe instructs them to arrest Li, the chief orders Gabe to be immediately sent to Hades' universe. At this critical moment, Evan discovers a clue. The traces of the ring confirm Gabe's identity. Subsequently, Li is bound under the spacetime device and sentenced to lifelong exile. In gratitude for Gabe's assistance, Evan sends him back to the place where he first met his wife. In this universe, Gabe reunites with his wife once again, while the other Li finds himself in exile. Unable to reign supreme in the universe, he resolves to become the most powerful being here and begins an endless cycle of battles.